Hello, everybody. We are back and we are MCing you now. The wait is over, everybody. After a long hiatus, we're finally back. Me and WH Park for the latest edition of MCU Later. How are you doing, WH?
I'm pretty good, Way. It's been a while since we talked, and a lot of things have happened. A lot of MCU news on the Disney Plus. Seen some movies, watched some TV. I signed up for the Criterion Channel.
Oh, what's that? I didn't even know what that is. I mean, I could assume what it is, but tell us about the.
The Criterion Channel is the streaming service of the Criterion Collection.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that company.
Yes.
Basically, the Criterion Collection puts out special feature DVDs and Blu-rays of like pretty prestigious movies. And
It's the the movie snobs, basically favorite service.
basically, yeah, it's like I have a lot of Criterion in my collection. Most of my Kurosawa movies are Criterion editions, and I have like Ghost Dog is Criterion and tons of stuff. So I just thought it's $100 for a year. I'm like, I spend that like on comics a week, so fuck it, just get it. So
Okay, and of course I say snob with the most affection possible. So that's awesome, dude. I mean, I had wondered actually because like DVD sales obviously aren't such a big thing anymore. So what's a company like Criterion going to do to try to stay in the market? And of course, streaming service makes all the sense. So does it have all the bonus features and everything?
you can pick a movie and then it'll have like all the mini documentaries and featurettes and things like that. So yeah, it's a pretty good service. I mean, they
Sounds
don't
cool.
have the entirety of their catalog on the service all at the same time. It's like, oh, this movie's going to come off, so we're going to make room for this movie, or we're going to feature this director, for a couple of months, and then this director's going to come off, and so forth, so on. So
This is the thing, WH, is like, I only, but because we've been off for several months now, I only really get to hear you talk about pro wrestling. So I feel like it's almost a bit of a breath of fresh air, and I'm sure for the audience as well, to get to hear you talk about your other interests, of which, of course, there are many. And of course, chief among them is movies, is also comic books and
yeah,
comic book movies.
comic book movies, comic book television shows.
Comic book television shows. Okay, so we have a lot to get to, and I
Yeah.
think we're going to spend a lot more time maybe on things other than just the episodes because we don't actually have an episode to talk about here.
No.
This is a primer edition of MCU Later, so we are here to get you all set for the debut of Moon Knight next week, and we'll be spending plenty of time to talk about Moon Knight, but we'll also spend some time here to catch you guys up on some MCU news, and towards the end of the show, I think maybe some of our thoughts on the Batman.
Oh yeah. By the way, we have a special guest. I didn't tell you about this. Should I show
Oh,
you our special guest?
who's that? Yeah. Oh,
It's
okay. Okay. By the way, everybody, we have this available on video as well. So look in your
Sure.
show description if you actually want to watch us for some reason talk. We're both wearing hats. We're just two Asians in hats talking about
I got
things
my
we
post
like.
wrestling hat.
And WS has just held up his Moon Knight Funko Pop.
That's right. Mr. Knight. I got this in Sydney, Australia, in a comic book shop near my friend's house. And I just thought, oh, I like that version of Moon Knight. How much is that? It's like $20. I thought, I'll buy it. I think now, like, probably this is going to go for a lot higher nowadays.
I'll bet, yeah, even unboxed, yeah. So you're obviously have a deep connection to this character even back before this Disney Plus show was announced.
Yeah, I mean, my first exposure to Moon Knight was like his first ongoing series in the 80s, written by Doug Mensch, who's his co-creator, and drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz, doing his best Neil Adams impersonation. So that's where when we get to talking about like the parallels, like a lot of people draw between Moon Knight and Batman, that this is the era that they refer to because of the way Bill Sienkiewicz drew Moon Knight, the comic book series, and Moon Knight himself, and some other elements that Mensch brought into the character that he didn't have before the ongoing series.
So there are a lot of names there that WH just mentioned, and I'm assuming at some point you will have some comic recommendations for us.
I think
You
I'll
save
save
them.
those. I think I'm
Okay.
going to save those for like for episode one and then going forward.
Your
So
homework is to just listen to us and what we
that's
have
right.
to say, okay? Because that's the most important thing. Before we get to Moon Knight, let's maybe talk a little bit about the MCU and what we've missed in the several months. The first of which I think maybe the biggest change that has since come to Disney Plus, at least since we last spoke, is the addition of the Netflix Defenders shows onto the service now. I think. Yeah, so it's pretty much all of them. So that includes, of course, Daredevil, includes Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, your favorite, Iron Fist, and the Punisher, and of course the Defenders. So this marks at least a bit of a switch for Disney Plus because, of course, being Disney, it's traditionally been a very PG rated, I should say, type of service, and these Netflix shows have been very on PG. They have been certainly very violent. I believe there are depictions of sex, superhero sex, even. So, what do you think of the decision, and have you taken advantage of this, WH?
I mean, I've watched all the Daredevil stuff. I watched both seasons of The Punisher. Unfortunately, I watched the first season of Iron Fist, which was complete fucking shit. I recommend if you haven't seen Iron Fist, don't bother. Outside of Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing, she's like the lone highlight of that show. You should watch it for her only. But you can skip that. But all 3 seasons of Daredevil, great. The Defenders, like that's kind of like Daredevil's season 2.5 in many respects. You should watch that.
Mhm.
Um, and then like the 2 seasons of The Punisher. The second season I think is much better than the first season. I really like that one, but I've yet to watch a full season of Jessica Jones just because I thought the character is so boring. So
I think you'll like it. I mean, I was totally in on the Netflix shows. I would say pretty much all the way up until the Defenders. I was even in on Iron Fist, so I unfortunately did also watch that season. But like after the Defenders, I think I just kind of lost interest. And at this point, there are just so many shows to catch up on
yeah,
that I tried starting Daredevil season 3, which everybody seems to recommend, but there's just so many episodes that I just find it a bit daunting. So it might be something that I might step back into. Of course, all this comes with the re-editions of Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin back into the MCU proper through Spider-Man: No Way Home and also Hawkeye. And it's been somewhat heavily debated amongst the fan base about whether their Netflix histories are actually the same as their current MCU histories. And we've had conflicting, I would say, answers, and or maybe just kind of speculation from the actors themselves. I believe D'Onofrio himself says he's basing his portrayal of the character on the same character that he played in the Netflix shows up until this point. Whereas I think Charlie Cox in a recent panel says that he thinks of his version of Matt Murdock as more of a variant. So I think the answer will pretty much kind of like, be left up to Kevin Feige and like some of the other people to determine. But I'm willing to bet it's a bit more of a soft reboot, similar
yeah.
to who have they done recently? That's kind of like that.
Soft reboot.
Yeah, soft rebooted the character.
Um,
So basically, like they're in the system, but like they're not going to make so many allusions to the past. They'll just assume that the origin of the character. They'll assume that maybe the bare bones is that Kingpin used to run or does currently run an empire, has this history with Matt Murdock, and all I have to do is just share a glance and you'll know the deep history between the two, but they probably won't get into the specifics.
no, I mean, if you watch the last season of Daredevil, season 3, it's pretty definitive. Do you know what I mean? Like it does pay off. Like I think that last episode of Daredevil season 3, like if you stick with the beginning of the season and get right to that end, it's so rewarding. It is so rewarding. Like I highly recommend it. My big thing with the Kingpin is like if they do another Spider-Man film, I hope the Kingpin is the villain because I would love to see Spider-Man, this version of like the Tom Holland version of Spider-Man, have scenes with Wilson Fisk, played by Vincent D'Onofrio.
Man, that would be. I mean, that is such a classic comic pairing, isn't it? Even like for me, watching the Spider-Man cartoon show in the '90s. I mean, that was always one of his chief rivals. But we'll see what the latest is with the Sony deal and whether or not that would even be a possibility. But we certainly hope so.
You know what I think? I think eventually we're going to hear that Marvel or Disney is going to buy Sony Pictures from Sony.
I think eventually we'll hear that Disney has bought everything.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for them to buy Hasbro So then they have like my entire childhood under one roof, like GI Joe and Transformers and all those Hasbro properties.
They'll own you soon enough,
They'll they'll
WH.
they'll own that, and then they're gonna buy like fucking the Gundam franchise from Japan or something. I don't know.
Sure, why not? Yeah, so the Netflix shows are out there. If you guys are watching it maybe for the first time, I mean, let us know how you guys like it and what you want to see, which elements you want to see brought back into the MCU, and which ones you think, it's best that they leave behind.
Iron Fist, don't bring him in.
This is somewhat new news that just came out today, and that is, I suppose, the confirmation that Nova is currently in the works. Deadline reports that Marvel is developing a Nova project, and this is related to our discussion because the person attached to write the series is somebody who is working on, or who has recently worked and written for Moon Knight. His name is Sabir Pirzada. Apologies if I got that name wrong, but he is attached to write this project. It is unknown right now if it'll be a Disney Plus series or if it's a movie. I believe it's also unknown which version of the of Nova will actually be featured on the show, but because we've already had the introduction of the Nova Corps and Xandar in the MCU, I think we could maybe assume that it's Richard Rider. Is that his name?
That would be the first incarnation of the Nova character in the Marvel universe. So I think you should just go with Richard Rider. If you want to introduce, I forget the name of the character who came in after, like the most recent version.
Sam something.
Sam something, yeah. Sorry. Then you can introduce him in a sequel or future season of, if it's a TV show.
Samuel Alexander is the new one. Okay, are you excited about this idea? I don't know much about the character myself, actually.
So Nova is basically like the Marvel version of Green Lantern in the sense that he's a space cop. That's the basic premise. And so Richard Rider is very much like gets his Nova powers the same way like Hal Jordan gets his Green Lantern ring. So it's,
so is he human?
He's human. Yeah, he's from Earth. And then he gets recruited into, like, he gets the Nova powers from a current, like a dying, I think it was like one of the dying Nova Corps member gives him the Nova powers, and then he gets recruited into the Nova Corps, and then he has adventures on Earth and then in space and and then he joins the New Warriors in the 90s and things like that.
As with most introductions of new characters, I'm always curious to see how they weave it into the current existing fabric that's already been established in the MCU. And I mean, of course, last we heard about Xandar, the home of the Nova Corps that we were introduced to in the first Guardians movie. They had the orb taken from them from Thanos, who ended up decimating the entire planet and killing half of its population. So we have not been able to see any of that. We have no idea how much of it has been recovered since the 5 years, and I'm sure this is like perfect material for them to catch us up on, and maybe a perfect opportunity to, for a dying Nova Corps member to give Richard Rider his powers.
Yeah, I mean, if they lead this into being introducing more cosmic aspects of the Marvel universe, and then maybe lead into the Annihilation storyline, they want to kind of adapt that into an MCU, property of some kind. That would be cool as well.
Mm-hmm. Some sad news to update people on. Of course, many of you will have heard the recent passing of William Hurt, who of course played Thunderbolt Ross from very early on in the Incredible Hulk film starring Edward Norton, all the way until Civil War, and I believe Infinity War. I think he was a part of as well, and maybe even had a cameo in Endgame towards the end there. But he was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer in May of 2018, and he died from complications of the disease in his home on March 13th, 2022, just before his 72nd birthday. So our thoughts are with his friends and family. What did you think of his portrayal as Thunderbolt Ross in the MCU?
I thought it was very accurate to what I imagine Thunderbolt Ross to be from reading the Hulk comics. And yeah, I just thought he just brought a really great kind of credibility with his history as a very serious actor to the role. And I like the fact that he got to carry it on in other Marvel movies was really cool. And you would think that maybe he was hoping to become the Red Hulk at some point, because that's who Thunderbolt Ross becomes in the comics, is the Red Hulk.
Yeah. So.
I have very mixed feelings about Red Hulk. Like on one hand, I kind of liked it, but then I thought, this is dumb. He's called Red Hulk.
Well, listen, I mean, the precedent has been set with She-Hulk, hasn't it? You know.
She-Hulk, like I don't know, like I'm used to that because like that was like existing when I was a kid. I was like, okay, female Hulk, She-Hulk. Yeah. Now they just call her Hulk, which I think is probably better. But
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So really unfortunate, of course. He was, I thought, tremendous in the role, and to me, like, it was incredibly neat to see him turn up in Civil War because he's the only tie that we still have canonically to that Edward Norton, Incredible Hulk film, and just sort of as like the authority figure, basically, in the MCU. I thought
yeah.
like he was very easy to hate. So, yeah, he will be missed. And as far as like plans in the MCU go, I wonder who they'll kind of replace that sort of figurehead with, and if they did have plans for the Red Hulk. I mean, I believe Thunderbolts, like, is he not in charge of that in the
No,
comics?
like not really. Like I don't know what iteration of the Thunderbolts they're gonna bring into the MCU. Whether it's like the original versions, which is like the the Masters of Evil, led by Baron Zemo, pretending to be superheroes to fool the world to gain try to take it over, or they're gonna do the government sponsor, like basically they're the Marvel version of the Suicide Squad. Like so,
Hmm.
those are the kind of two iterations of the Thunderbolts that exist out there. Like, and who knows which one they're going to do? Looks like they're using the Julia Louis Dreyfus character. Like maybe they're going to try to do the latter, the Suicide Squad
Hmm.
type of team.
Right. And then I just want to catch everybody up on maybe the MCU schedule that is to come, because it's been a while since we've maybe discussed it all. There are basically a million projects that are out there, everybody. For the next 10 years, I think we'll have MCU later sorted out. But at least this seems to be what has been at least confirmed so far. There are, of course, a lot of rumors, but on the schedule right now, of course, in only a few weeks' time at this point, debuting on May 6th, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That's coming out. And then we're just going to maybe focus on the movies first here. But then in July, we've got Thor, Love and Thunder. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is set to come out in November. Next year, we've got the Marvels in February. About a little over a year from now is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And then in July, we've got Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. At some point down the road, we're going to get a Fantastic Four film, and then two untitled projects for the end of 2023, as well as the beginning of 2024. So they're very busy, and this is not even including the Disney Plus shows, of which
Yeah.
there are plenty as well. So we've got Moon Knight coming out next week, and then that is followed in June by Miss Marvel, which is dropping its trailers right now. She-Hulk, which we've seen some previews of, is also going to debut at some point in 2022. What If Season 2 has also been announced for 2022. And then in December, we've got the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which is set to have some, canonical ties to the actual. It's James Gunn doing a Hollywood, or sorry, a Christmas special. And by the way, did you watch Peacemaker?
I did. Yeah, I
What
liked
did
it
you
a
think?
lot. I enjoyed it very much. I thought John Cena was fucking great in it. I do think Vigilante stole the show in a lot of his scenes, but it was fun. I liked the James Gunn Suicide Squad movie,
Hmm.
and so I was very curious about like what they were going to do with this Peacemaker spinoff, and I thought they knocked it out of the park. Like the funny thing is, like at work, like people would like, "Oh, do you have the Vigilante comic?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's over there." And I'm like, "Do I tell them what you saw on the show is nothing like the Vigilante that's in DC Comics?" Yeah, I didn't say anything. I just let
Let
them.
them find out them for themselves.
Yeah, for exactly.
Tell them
So
after they paid for the comic.
yeah, but I think it's so interesting to see like someone like John Cena, and to an extent as well, like Dave Bautista, like both get to work with James Gunn and like
Hmm.
become like superhero characters under his direction. These guys are gonna have like amazing acting careers, I feel like, and you contrast that with like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. It's like, well, these guys are actually trying to be actors, whereas now Dwayne's just being Dwayne, just a different shade of Dwayne in each movie that he does. Like I have zero fucking interest in Black Adam because it's Dwayne with a cape. Like I'm not really interested in seeing Dwayne with a cape.
But but if Dwayne is so great, like, I mean, I don't really hate on it, because like I don't know if I want him to play anybody else but The Rock in Fast and the Furious, for instance. I want to see Vin Diesel go up against The Rock. basically.
Yeah, I kind of hit my peak with Dwayne in fucking Hobbs and Shaw. I think like I was like, oh, he's not Hobbs anymore. Now he's fucking Dwayne. Hobbs is gone. Hobbs doesn't exist anymore. It's just fucking
No.
Dwayne there.
So following that, of course, we've got Secret Invasion also set to debut at this point at some point in 2022. So a lot of Disney Plus stuff coming out, and then that's also not even mentioning next year, which is Agatha, House of Harkness, Armor Wars, Echo, Ironheart, some Wakanda series that Ryan Coogler is working on. So a lot of stuff to come. Are you ready to talk about some Moon Knight, WH?
Yeah, let's talk about Moon Knight.
Okay, so this is a character that I have always kind of known about, but I've never gone to as far as to read a comic, and I'm willing to bet maybe a lot of our audience might be in the same boat. So, can you describe to us this character as best as you can?
Okay, so I made notes. So he debuts in a comic book called Werewolf by Night in issues number 32 and 33. This is in August and September of 1975. He's created by writer Doug Moench, like I mentioned before, and artist Don Perlin with inker Al Milgram. Basically, Moon Knight is hired by a criminal organization called the Committee, because back in the 70s, they all had like very creative names, like the criminal mastermind organizations, the committee, shit like
Sounds
that.
like the Collective. Sounds like they're gonna put on a WrestleMania show.
Probably not. Maybe not as good.
Maybe some barbed wire matches.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hear you're. Oh, we'll talk about this later. I've got a new nickname for you, like, by the way. So.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
Can't wait.
We'll talk about next week's episode. Anyways, so they hire Moon Knight to capture the Werewolf by Night, whose human name, by the way, is Jack Russell. Yes, the Marvel werewolf character's human name is Jack Russell, which I think is
perfect.
Funny. It's pretty funny, I think.
Yeah.
By the end of this 2-part story with Moon Knight and the Werewolf by Night, he's basically like, oh, this werewolf's not so bad. These committed guys are a bunch of assholes. I'm gonna free him. So he frees him. And in the whole premise of like the reason why Moon Knight can capture the werewolf is because his gimmick is that he's all white. He wears all white, so all his weapons are made of silver. So of course, werewolf's weakness is silver. Not the strongest premise to go with, but it gets better from there. And then from this storyline, he then appears sporadically in short stories or as a guest star in titles such as Marvel Spotlight, Spectacular Spider-Man, and teaming up with The Thing in Marvel 2-in-1. And not all of these are written by Doug Moench. Like some of them are written by other writers. And Doug Moench has gone on record in interviews like saying, "Oh, those aren't really Moon Knight stories. He only feels like the stories he's written are actual canon Moon Knight stories."
Interesting. Okay.
But Moench does return to writing Moon Knight regularly, and this in the Hulk magazine. So in the 70s, the Hulk not only had his own comic book, but he also had his own magazine, and it was a black and white. I guess you could tell more kind of like mature storylines because these weren't authorized by the Comic Code Authority, whereas the comic books were. So you could tell like more mature stories. There's like a famous story of Bruce Banner going to the YMCA, and something happens there that triggers his transformation to the Hulk. You can look at
what?
You can look it up. I'm not going to say anymore.
Sounds amazing.
Okay. You'd have to. Anyways, go read it yourself.
Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk after going to the YMCA. Imagine like that. Just like imagine pitching that to like the editor. Hey, I got a great idea. The Hulk goes to the YMCA. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, you should read the story. Anyways, I won't say more than that. Don't want to spoil it. But this is where Bill Sienkiewicz comes into the picture, and he becomes the
okay, I just googled the Hulk in the YMCA. Yeah, I don't know if I'm clamoring to read that anymore. But okay, sorry, please go on.
Yeah, so as I said before, Sienkiewicz's art is very reminiscent early in his career of Neil Adams, who was a legendary artist for doing Batman with Denny O'Neil in the 70s as well. So it's like, oh, okay, so you have this character who now, also the costume changes. So before he kind of had like these glider, kind of a short cape that was acting like a glider, but now he's full on cowl. He's got a full on cape, and the way he's drawn is very much in the shadows and things like that. And so now it's like, oh, he's Marvel's version of Batman, so like any kind of Batman stories they want to tell, they can do with Moon Knight. And also Doug Moench, had done stories with Batman when he worked at DC.
So would you say like this change in perhaps being more of the Marvel's Batman, like is that mainly Sienkiewicz's direction, or did Mensch decide to take it that way as well?
Well, I mean, the other thing with having these series like kind of the backup feature in the Hulk magazine is that you could flesh out Moon Knight, in particular, his alter ego of Mark Spector, and this leads us into the ongoing series that launches in the early '80s. So one thing that's going to be very prominent in the TV show is the fact that Moon Knight has multiple personalities. Now they've diagnosed him with dissociative, uh,
Dissociative.
dissociative identity disorder.
Yes. Yeah.
So that manifests itself in the comic books as three separate identities. One is Mark Spector, which is his real name. That's that's who he grew up as. Then he adopts the identity of Stephen Grant, which is the millionaire character that
The Bruce Wayne.
the Bruce Wayne, basically, that finances Moon Knight's vigilante activities. And then when Moon Knight needs to get information about whatever case he's working on, he goes to the streets of New York as cab driver Jake Lockley. And whenever he's each person, they speak differently. Stephen Grant speaks differently than Mark Spector. Mark Spector speaks differently than Jake Lockley, and Moon Knight speaks differently than all three of them.
So we know that Oscar Isaac is going to use various accents to maybe separate the different identities. But in the comics, I'm curious, how do they distinguish the three personalities?
The way so Mark Spector is a mercenary. This is like how he's trained, like where you explain like how he can, how he's really good at fighting and being a crime fighter and things like that. It's also how he becomes Moon Knight is because through his mercenary activities. In the comic books, it's kind of like so he also has a supporting cast. One is like a guy called by the name of Frenchie, who's his his mercenary friend, who's a helicopter pilot, who's his pilot who pilots the Mooncopter. Yes, it's called the fucking Mooncopter. It's actually kind of cool. Like in later series, they redesign it. But
I mean, the Batmobile, sure, why not?
And then his love interest, Marlene, is like she's in love with Stephen Grant, but Frenchie calls him Mark. And then the kind of the cast of characters that he meets, like in like among people who don't know that he's Moon Knight, always know him as Jake Lockley. And as Jake Lockley, he talks with a very like heavy New York accent, like very rough. Or Stephen Grant is more refined and things like that.
So I guess I'm also just curious, like so I guess he speaks with a New York accent because I guess like they write his dialogue in the comics like a New
it's
Yorker.
Like when like to give other examples, like when he's Stephen Grant, he speaks like his dialogue is written like he's Matt Murdock or something like that. When he's Jake Lockley, he sounds like he's the fucking Thing, like Ben Grimm.
Okay. Do they use different fonts?
No, you just assume this, right? Like, and they make references to when other characters talk about it, like, oh, he's Steven right now because he doesn't speak like Mark.
Oh, okay.
Or Marlene would be like, oh, it's Mark. I don't want to talk. Don't touch me. I only want to be touched by Steven.
Wow, that is so interesting. What an interesting take on a superhero character.
Yeah, so it takes the idea of having a secret identity, a dual identity, to another level because now he's got like 4 identities.
Yeah.
And this is also like this series also introduces the idea that he becomes Moon Knight because he has a patron in the moon god, the Egyptian moon god of Khonshu. So
a patron.
Yeah. So
like a Patreon.
Quite similar. Quite similar, but there's no double level or espresso level. There's only one level, and that's full on fucking Fist of Khonshu Vengeance Avatar level for this Patreon.
Wow.
So like I said, Mark Spector is a mercenary. He works a lot with a guy called Raoul Bushman, who has a skull face, tattooed onto his face. And in one of their adventures in Egypt, they run across this archaeologist, Dr. Arlene, whose daughter is Marlene, who eventually becomes the love interest of Mark Spector / Stephen Grant. And Bushman kills Dr. Arlene, but Mark Spector's like, no, we don't have to kill him. And then Bushman beats the shit out of Mark Spector to the point where he's about to die. And then he dies in front of the statue of Khonshu. Mm-hmm. And then it's inferred that Khonshu brings him back to life. and that Mark Spector says, he brought me back to life. I'm going to become his messenger on Earth. I'm going to become an avatar of vengeance.
Okay, so there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, people that are worried that like this is somehow spoiling the show. I mean, listen, this is the source material, and we know Marvel changes everything anyway. So I mean, I'm sure it'll be inspired by some of it, but you can choose to. I mean, this is what we're here to do in a primer. So I don't want people to be like, you're spoiling the show. Like this is what we're here to do. Anyway, so he had all of this stuff going on. All of his identities were
Yeah.
present before he even got quote unquote powers. Is that right?
So he doesn't really have powers. He just thinks he's been resurrected by Khonshu. You never in the like this 38 issue run of the original series, you never really get a definitive answer because like Khonshu doesn't suddenly appear in a dream sequence or comes to life or anything. Everyone thinks he's crazy. Like, oh yeah, that statue brought you back to life. Okay, sure he did. They just think it's a coincidence, right? So it's not until later series that, oh yes, Khonshu did bring him back to life. Khonshu is his patron, like and like various writers will give him powers based on the fucking phases of the moon or da 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 da, which I'm not a big fan of. I just like the fact that he's like a highly trained, like Olympic level athlete who can beat the shit out of criminals,
Like a Bruce Wayne
like
or
Batman. Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
or Daredevil or what have you.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, another question I had is because, yeah, one of the things I do know about this character is that he has like multiple personalities. Do you think I mean, some of that came as a result of just various creators having kind of their own takes on what the character was supposed to be, and then just at the end being like, okay, like this all works. We're gonna have them all be all of these personalities.
This is an idea by Doug Mensch. So he created the character and then like he's able to develop the character more. So he says, "Oh, I'm going to take this idea of superheroes usually having two identities and take it to another level." And then it runs from there. Like pretty much every writer after that like will do some variation of this, especially in maybe the last 10 years or 10-15 years. Like writers really go with this idea of like that he has serious like mental health issues. Moon Knight does, Mark Spector does, and for you mine it for like drama and like for conflict within the character and to varying degrees of success. But like there are instances where it's just like, no, that I'm going to totally ignore that. Like the 1990s series, Mark Spector Moon Knight. There's no Stephen Grant, no Jake Lockley. It's just Mark Spector is Moon Knight. He knows he's Mark Spector, and they just go with that. And it's a very straightforward comic book. It's not written by Doug Mensch. And the Doug Mensch, I think, disavows that comic book run entirely. And then, Doug Mensch will come back to do various series, mini-series of Moon Knight. Because, like, he gets a new series, gets canceled, gets a new series, he gets canceled. This is very, very much in, like, Moon Knight's kind of publication history, is that he has a lot of series get canceled on him. Because, for whatever reason, he can't necessarily sustain an ongoing series for a long period of time.
I think, one of the great things about having these MCU iterations now is that they can take all that story, all that canon from decades and decades of development and just basically, decades worth of very talented people creating these think tanks of all the material to throw into this character. And now they get to basically, edit it. They get to kind of make it into, something that's a bit more streamlined and a bit more easier to digest, taking the best elements of the character. So this seems like it's one of those cases. And I would say the fact that, this is not an A-list or B-list or I mean, maybe C-list character, at this point, gives them probably a whole lot more free reign to like, come up with even their own interpretation for certain things.
My feeling is that they're taking what will work on screen and jettisoning everything else. I don't, from my understanding, there's no Marlene, there's no Frenchie, there's no Moon Knight helicopter or aircraft of any kind. Stephen Grant is not a millionaire. Stephen Grant is someone who works in a museum in London, apparently, and there's only Stephen Grant. There's only Mark Spector and Moon Knight, and that's it. And it's definitely like a more mystical take on Moon Knight as well. And like Khonshu is definitively like a character in the series, it seems, and like he's giving Mark Spector his powers to become Moon Knight to fight evil in our world.
Thank you so much for that, WH, for some of that catching up on us on at least some of the comic book origins. I have some notes regarding actually the production of the show on Disney Plus. So this will be the sixth MCU Disney Plus series, of course, and this will be another 6 episode run, which starts next week. The showrunner that has been attached to this project is named Jeremy Slater. You might know him because he worked on the film adaptation of the anime Death Note. He has also worked on TV series such as The Umbrella Academy and The Exorcist. Something that I found perhaps the most interesting is that he is also credited as the writer of Fant Four Stick.
Sorry, what was that?
Fant Four Stick. The Fantastic Four, the really bad Josh Trank Fantastic Four.
Oh,
Now, this was a cause of concern for me. I'm like, oh God, why would you take anybody attached to that thing other than Michael B. Jordan, for the MCU? But he was attached, and he basically wrote the initial draft of the film,
yeah.
which was basically the original version that ended up being discarded basically by Josh Trank when Josh Trank took over the project. So I don't think you can blame any of it on Jeremy Slater here. So he is the showrunner for Moon Knight. The director of the 4 episodes, the director of 4 of the 6 episodes, his name is Mohamed Diab, and I found his story perhaps the most interesting of all. He's been doing some press around, and to me, it just kind of runs along the line of very unique choices for directors for Marvel Studios. He is an Egyptian screenwriter and director, somebody whose credits lie entirely outside of Hollywood. He has made independent films set in the Arab world, touching on very serious and political subjects, among them being a movie called Cairo 678, which is a film focusing on an epidemic of public sexual harassment in Egypt. Another film he's made is called Amira, which is about a Palestinian girl who learns that she was conceived from the sperm of an Israeli man. So, hardly the type that I think you would picture, taking on a Marvel superhero project. But Diab said to The Hollywood Reporter recently that my movies are hard, serious, and about big topics, and I feel strongly that Moon Knight is going to be like that. It's going to be entertainment, but also heavy. At the same time, we're being so creative with the jokes and with the action, as I keep saying to my wife, I can't believe I'm funny in another language. So this is basically his first English language directorial debut and by far the biggest project he's ever worked on. He is also becoming Marvel's first Middle Eastern director as a result of this connection. So I'm definitely interested simply, hearing a name like his attached to it. It seems very much, I think, for Marvel, rooted in the search for authenticity in depicting perhaps, more of the ancient Egyptian background of this Moon Knight character. It's another part that, we're taking another step towards authentic representation in Phase 4 of the Marvel Universe here. He made headlines recently because he didn't have very nice things to say about the depiction of his homeland in Hollywood, specifically pointing out Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 1984. In a quote to SFX magazine, Diab says, "In my pitch to Marvel, there was a big part about Egypt and how inauthentically it has been portrayed throughout Hollywood's history. It's always exotic. We call it Orientalism. It dehumanizes us. We're always naked. We are always sexy. We are always bad. We're always over the top. You never see Cairo. You always see Jordan shot for Cairo. Morocco shot for Cairo. Sometimes Spain shot for Cairo. This really angers us. I remember seeing Wonder Woman 1984, and there was a big sequence in Egypt, and it was always a disgrace to us. For us. You had a sheikh. That doesn't make any sense to us. Egypt looked like a country from the Middle Ages. It looked like the desert." So based on that alone, I gotta see this. I need to see. I mean, first of all, in my head, I don't really know what Egypt looks like. I just kind of know pyramids, and from the sounds of it, I think and why would I expect any less? It's a lot more than just that.
I'd imagine this is also what kind of drew Oscar Isaac to do a tentpole, project for Disney again. I do think he was very disenchanted with the last Star Wars movie, and that he didn't want to be part of I read an interview with him in Empire magazine about promoting this show, is that he was he didn't want to be part of a machine anymore. He wanted to do small personal films, more drama and things like that he got convinced to take on this role to work for Disney again on a big budget, superhero character. when I heard that, I was like, he's cast as Mark Spector / Moon Knight. I was like, okay, what? This must be interesting because I didn't think he would ever do a project like this ever again.
He was also Apocalypse in
Oh
the
yeah,
X-Men movies, and that was shit too.
yeah.
So man, the man didn't have such great luck with it. So I have to imagine, yeah, you're probably right, WH, that being attached to maybe it's what seems like first of all a very interesting character, but also a director that seems very much rooted in a very serious sort of filmmaking style. Might have done it. Might have at least contributed to him agreeing to this.
Or he just needed a new house in California or something like that.
Could be that too. Could be that too. I mean, Star Wars probably doesn't pay that well, right? WH.
Hey, listen, if you got any toy fucking money, he's set for life.
Goodness.
So.
Oh, he's already set. Two of the 6 episodes will be directed by Justin Benton and Aaron Moorhead, who are an American directing duo. They will be doing episodes 2 and 4. So it's possible we may see some tonal changes for some of the episodes later on this season, but we shall see. Onto the casting here, as WH mentioned, Oscar Isaac is the star of this film. We previously have seen him most famously in the Star Wars sequels, Dune, most recently.
Yes.
X-Men Apocalypse, as we mentioned, Drive, and Ex Machina. Perhaps one of the bigger names that Marvel has attached to one of their Disney Plus shows. So we'll see how he does. In all, the critical response seems to be incredibly good. Ethan Hawke, a name that I personally haven't really heard too much of in recent years. Ethan Hawke is the series' main antagonist, named Arthur Harrow. I didn't really hear you mention Arthur Harrow in any of your descriptions, WH. Is this a character you're familiar with?
Not really. I had to refresh my memory of okay, he's not in the main Moon Knight series, the first one. He's not really in any subsequent series, as I can recall. Oh, where's he from? Oh, he's from the second, very forgettable Moon Knight series, Fist of Khonshu. That's what it's called. And he's kind of this doctor who's like very, very enamored with human experimentation that happened during the Nazis reign of terror in during World War II. And so this is where, but this is not a version. This version is not really based on that. They just take the name. From my research, he's more based on 2 other kind of Moon Knight villain characters. One is called the Sun King, and another one is called Morningstar, who's a cult leader. And this is I think what we're getting with this character is that he's a leader of a cult, and he has some ties to Moon Knight and Mark Spector somehow. So yeah, I think it's cool that Ethan Hawke is in this. It's always nice when they get a well-known actor to play the antagonist of one of their properties.
I'm pretty excited, especially because it doesn't sound like, again, with these sort of characters that maybe aren't as well known, they're not so tied to expectations from the audience, so they can really do whatever they want with it. So I'm very, very excited to see it. I'm gonna try not to butcher this name, but May Kalamawi plays Layla El Fowley, who is an archaeologist and somebody from Mark Spector's past. So that seems to be the principal cast here. Also of note, I do want to mention is that the series also features one of the final performances from French actor Gaspard Ulliel as Anton Mogar, aka the Midnight Man. He played a young Hannibal Lecter in Hannibal Rising, and he is also somebody who unfortunately passed away in January of this year from a skiing accident at the age of 37. So really unfortunate news. And I mean, I remember hearing about an MCU actor passing away, and this will be the series where we'll get to see some of his final performances. So really unfortunate, of course, but I think it'll add I guess an extra layer of sentimentality and just preciousness, I want to say, maybe to the series.
Yeah, Midnight Man is a character that appears in the first Moon Knight series, and he's an art thief, and he wears all black. So he's visually very contrasted with Moon Knight, who wears all white, of course. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'm very excited about this way. I have to say, when we see him in the kind of the cape and cowl version of the costume, I'm not a big fan of the bandage look. I understand why they're doing it, to tie it in with Khonshu and like
the mummy type of thing.
The mummy stuff. But when I saw Oscar Isaac in this costume, I was like, okay, hashtag that's my Moon Knight.
And WH is again holding up his Mr. Knight Funko, which
That's
is
right.
the look that he has when he's in his white suit. Which who pulls off the white suit better, Oscar Isaac or Tetsuya Naito?
Oh, Oscar Isaac for sure.
Wow.
Definitely.
Okay, there you have it. So hopefully that's enough to catch you guys all up to Moon Knight starting next week. And before we get out of here, WH, I think you have some thoughts on the Batman.
The Batman. I loved it. That 3 hours flew by for me. Like, it's probably the first true iteration of Batman as a detective, using his intelligence and his detective skills as much as his like physical prowess to, fight the Riddler, so to speak, in this film. And what I love, I think the thing I love about this film so much is that it's a film. It's a cinematic experience that happens to be about Batman. And yeah, I haven't seen it yet, like twice yet. I definitely want to go see it again. So I'm very excited to just try to find time to carve out some time and go to the theaters again, see it again, and maybe I'll try to see it in IMAX this time. I just saw it in regular cinema before, like just VIP, and so there weren't any kids there. I hate kids at movies. Just want to tell you that. Aren't we gonna?
I don't know. I don't know if this is so much a kids movie even.
No, like my friend saw it and he was like, "There's a fucking kid there. Why would you bring a kid to a 3 hour movie, especially like one that's obviously not for kids?" Anyways, listen, I remember going to see fucking Francis Ford Coppola's fucking Dracula, and some mother brought in her like 7-year-olds, 2 7-year-olds. I'm like, really? She immediately bolted as soon as the naked women showed up. So like, there you go.
Sometimes it's hard to know just by looking at the title, because maybe she's thinking, oh, like, oh, my kids love Count Chocula cereal, like the Count on Sesame Street. He's a fun guy. And
Yeah,
take them to
well,
watch this Dracula
isn't
movie.
that the whole point about being like? I'm sure when John Pollock like picks something to watch for his kids, he's like researching, is this appropriate for my children to watch? So
Yeah, I think you could bet John is doing that. So I was not planning on going to see this movie, but like upon the recommendation of UWH and plenty of other people who said this is a great movie, it's a great Batman movie. Some people saying it's the best Batman movie. I decided to go and see it, and unfortunately, I didn't have a great experience.
Oh, no.
And I know I'm really on an island there, but like I just, it wasn't even an issue of me not having the energy, but like I fell asleep. I have to say, like it's a dark theater. Half the time couldn't make out the dialogue, and especially when it's a detective movie, like one of these kind of murder mystery type of things. I need to know everything. Otherwise, if I'm off board, then I'm lost. So it's one that I really wish I maybe stayed at home to wait for the home release for, so I could watch it with subtitles. I could brighten the screen if I wanted to, and maybe I could take a break, in between the 3 hours if I needed to. I am a full confidence that people like yourself whose opinions I really respect, you guys are probably absolutely right that this is a great movie. I just didn't have a great experience with it in my particular viewing for me.
okay, well maybe I can come over and watch it with you when it's available on home release. Maybe
I'd be down for that.
I'll bring the pizza and the wings.
But see, that I would feel pressure. Like, what if I don't like it a second time?
Well, there's still the pizza and the wings, so it's okay.
That's good too. You're
And
right.
me, if you don't like the movie, fuck that. I'm there. I'm so much fun to watch things with live, just as you well know, and John knows. Like, we can watch a shitty ROH pay-per-view, and it's still fun because I'm there making fun of all the wrestlers on screen.
And you maybe we'll do it on a Monday night, and you can stick around for Raw afterwards too, because I know you love that.
There you go. Are we going to talk about quickly? But I did promise, like on Twitter, like I give my very quick thoughts about the Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, of course, absolutely. This is your space, WH.
Or as I like to retitle it, the wet fart of Boba Fett, because that's what it was.
Hey, maybe this is where I'll disagree with. Maybe this is where I'll disagree with you, because okay, hot take. I mean, I enjoyed the show. I probably didn't like it as much as The Mandalorian, but like I didn't hate it. I didn't even hate the solo episodes of him, like like going through the trials with the Tusken Raiders. I thought that stuff was
that
cool.
part I liked, like the dances with wolf shit.
Yeah.
When Boba Fett's like fucking Kevin Costner and dances with wolves, that's good. I love that stuff. It's when he's becoming a crime lord, when it's like, okay, we're gonna reenact the second Godfather movie, and like fucking Boba Fett's like fucking Vito Corleone. It's some of the dialogue is terrible. I gotta say the mods, that fucking
The
scooter
worst.
gang,
Yeah.
they're fucking shit. They are like the worst thing. They're worse than the fucking Ewoks, and I hate the Ewoks
I
with
was
a
wondering
passion.
what you were gonna say. Are you gonna go Ewok as your basis of
I mean,
comparison?
like my most hated thing in Star Wars
Jar
ever
Jar.
is fucking Jar Jar Binks. They're not
Yeah.
Jar Jar bad, but they're fucking below the Ewoks for sure. It's like, okay, they're a motorcycle gang and they're called the Mods because it's like, that was like a youth movement in 1960s British,
Yeah.
counterculture. Okay, why do they look like they're the fucking cast from fucking Pretty in Pink? They should look like they're the fucking cast from Quadrophenia. Okay, more Quadrophenia, less Pretty in Pink, please. Like that's and like that chasing is shit. It's
So
like it was so slow.
So here's the thing, yeah. Okay, so the they look stupid. Like, I mean, I the idea that, like, people are modifying their, like, teenagers are modifying their body parts to, like, have powers. I mean, it's been done before, but I think it's just really stupid. And like in Star Wars, it almost feels like too forced. Like everybody's got a gimmick, and this gimmick happens to be just, oh, I swap body parts. Now I have laser eyes or something.
It's so dumb.
Like it's lame. The motorcycles are lame. But I think if the chase was good, if the chase was amazing, even, it would have redeemed it. Like we wouldn't be saying that, oh, the mods are cool, but at least, like, I don't think they'd be hated as much. It's because the chase was so slow. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Like, this was the climax, and then, like, the next episodes, they follow up with, like, some, like, amazing stuff with the Slave One. But, like, somehow it's like, how do we get these two things in, like, the same episode? You do kind of bring up, like, okay, the Jar Jar Binks, the Ewoks. I think I'm okay overall. Like, I don't hate it as much as other people because there is precedent for shittiness in Star Wars. Like, to me, it's almost canonical to have just a really shitty thing in the midst of, like, really cool stuff every once in a while in Star Wars. And this time it just happened to be the mods.
That being said, we did get 2 great Mandalorian episodes in this series,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and the Mandalorian got a new whip, his new fucking starfighter, which
This
is,
looks
you know what,
awesome.
I'm bugging Sino to, like, hey, if you come to Toronto, you want to bring me something, that Lego set. That might be my first Lego way. I might bring it
Ooh.
if I get it. I might bring it over with me
Ooh,
to your
okay.
place. Just let you know.
Yeah, we could build together. It'd be a great time. No, it's great. I mean, of course, like, that seems to be the defining, perhaps, characteristic in coming off of the season, is that the show wasn't so great, but the 2 Mandalorian episodes are fantastic that are contained within it. So I don't know what happened. It's weird. Like, it really is weird that they would, like, separate so much from Boba Fett for the final 2. But do you think that there will be a second season?
I hope there's not a second season. Like, if they're gonna do anything with Boba Fett, just integrate it into the Mandalorian. I
feel
don't
like there
think
has to be.
I don't think he's a strong enough character the way they've developed him to carry a series. Like, that's, to me, is like they ran out of ideas and they're like, okay, well, let's bring the Mandalorian. We need to set up season 3 of the Mandalorian. Okay, like, Boba Fett in season 2 of Mandalorian was fucking great because he didn't have to carry the show. He's like, the partner of Din Djarin, and that worked beautifully. So, like,
He just kicked ass. Like, that was it.
I don't want to see him be the head of a fucking crime family, like being
Yeah.
oh, you should be on a litter. I don't want a litter. Oh, hey, if you give me money, I'm gonna protect your nightclub, which he didn't. Like,
I don't want him to be so good. Like,
Yeah, no.
I want him to be a bit evil. Like, he should be an anti. Like, he was an
Ruthless.
anti-hero. Like, or at least that's the story everybody made up in their heads, right? He's a bounty hunter.
he's a man with principles and a code of ethics and honor. That's fine, but he's also ruthless
Yeah.
as anyone else in the Star Wars universe, and that's what I want to see. Like, yeah, like, I would imagine that season 3 of Mandalorian is gonna, really focus on this idea of him kind of reconnecting with his Mandalorian culture. With, like, I'm seeing Bo-Katan's coming back, Sasha Banks is gonna come back, and then we'll have Boba Fett in there, and then, like, the armor, like, tons of other shit, Mandalorian shit. Like, if they bring in Sabine Wren from Rebels, I'll lose my fucking mind. Let me just say that.
Okay. What did you think of the Luke appearance?
It's fine. Like I don't
Fine,
expect to.
dude. It was amazing. Are you kidding me?
It's
Like
fine.
they perfected that technology. Like it
I can
looks
still
so
tell it
good.
look a little fake, but I think they sample like his like to make his dialogue. They sampled like other recordings of him.
They
Like
did a whole lot of stuff, but I'll say like
yeah,
it's a huge improvement over the Mandalorian season 2 finale. And I
yeah.
don't know if like because like here's the thing that like and don't quote me on this, everybody. People listening to this, some of you might know this better than me, but like I believe they did like you saw in that making of documentary, they spent loads of technology, loads of money trying to like get this what do you call it
Deep fake.
deep fake right for Luke. It looked fine, but in comparison to what a kid did on YouTube himself, it looked like total ass. So I believe they actually hired the YouTube person to help with this new iteration. And maybe I think that's the reason why it looks so much better.
That could be it. Like if you see someone out there outside of your sphere that is doing a better job than you just go hire that person. That's the
Yeah.
best way to improve your product in some ways. But I'm very excited about Mandalorian season 3 whenever that happens, and I'm very excited to when the Ahsoka series comes out, and the future of Star Wars is on Disney Plus is very bright, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So yeah, Star Wars, I would say, is at least adjacent. We're talking about Disney Plus property, so maybe a bit of Star Wars discussion will creep in once in a while to this show. But WH, I hope that we've done a great job. I think you've done a great job, but I hope the committee of you and I have done a good job of catching people up on the MCU and on Moon Knight. And so from this point on, we will be back every single week to cover all 6 episodes. Typically, we'll be here on Thursdays. And as always, we will create a feedback thread up at forum.postwrestling.com. If you guys want to watch along and leave your thoughts after every episode, you should have plenty of time. We're giving you at least 24 hours to watch it, so no excuses.
And comic book recommendations for each episode as well. We'll save it for those.
And maybe some special guests, including next week, because before the series even starts, I'm out of here. I'm taking a break.
Deathmatch Way. That you could join fucking Benno and create your own deathmatch podcast here at Post Wrestling.
I will not be present for episode 1 of our Moon Knight review, unfortunately, because Moon Knight happens to be debuting in the same week as the busiest week of the year in professional wrestling. That is, of course, WrestleMania week. So next week, what is going to happen is that John and I will be reviewing 2 shows exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. We will be talking about GCW's offerings of Bloodsport, as well as WH Park's favorite, Joey Janela's Spring Break, Night 1, 2022. So I will not be available, but the show is in great hands. Because who will you be joined by, WH?
I will be joined by MCU Later alumni, Rich Fan from Pro Wrestling Torch. And when I said, Rich, do you want to be on? Because Deathmatch Way has gone over to the dark side with like Benno, Deathmatch Richard, and I need some help. And he's like, fuck the deathmatch. I'm down with the Moon Knight. So Rich Fan will be joining us. It'll be fun.
Well, listen, if Moon Knight pulls out like a flaming table at some point, I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised, I think that's just how entertainment is in 2022. But I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, Rich is fantastic on every podcast I've ever heard him on, especially, when he's been on MCU Later. So I look forward to hearing you guys talk about that. What else is coming out for you, WH? Because it's a busy week for you, isn't it?
Oh, God. So tomorrow, we're recording a new episode of Post Perez with Karen Peterson. We're going to be talking about the upcoming massive Stardom weekend. We're going to talk about Pro Wrestling Noah. We're going to talk about New Japan Cup. We're going to talk about All Japan Champion Carnival and some recent All Japan matches that happened recently that were really good. And some GLEAT news. I saw something about
GLEAT.
some stuff of GLEAT that I thought was interesting. Put those on the docket for me and Karen to talk about. It's always good when like Karen joins me on the show. I think we're gonna talk about and she's gonna do her preview. Like she's gonna do the review of these Stardom shows for the site, and it's gonna be like obviously one of her massive like mini essays that she's gonna put up on the site. But before that, you can get the preview, like what to be excited about for these. This is like probably Stardom's. This is Stardom's like it's the return of Kairi Sane, Kairi Hojo, Kairi, just Kairi now. it's very exciting way. And like we're gonna have Julia versus Shuri for the red belt. I'm excited like about this, and I can't wait to talk to Karen about it.
I'm excited to hear you two talk about it because I think Karen's optimism and like her passion for like professional wrestling is definitely infectious, and WH, your pessimism for professional wrestling
Whatever do you mean?
is the perfect balance that I'm looking
It's not
forward
my
to
fault.
hearing.
Like all the booking in fucking wrestling in Japan is complete fucking shit, except for like two or three companies out there. But everything else is like either middling or the complete fucking shits. I'm looking at you, pro wrestling Noah.
Speaking of which, we have a shirt on sale at store.postwrestling.com. Everybody, okay, so until the end of the month, we are contributing all proceeds from the sales, or 30% of the proceeds, or of the profits from the sales of these shirts to two great causes, including the Japanese Red Cross and also Doctors Without Borders Canada. So go to store.postwrestling.com. It is the hottest selling item we've ever had in the Post Wrestling store by a mile. So get yours today.
I don't know if I'm gonna ever have the chance to thank everyone because this shirt has done number like I when you sent me the initial numbers, I was like whoa, and then it just kind of they keep trickling in. So I'll talk about it tomorrow night. Like I'm gonna think of a plan to like try to maybe over the course of a year, like a couple of names on each show I do.
Oh boy, yeah, good luck.
Because it might take that long. It may take a year to do that. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited to hear that conversation. And again, store.postwrestling.com to grab your 4 Pillars long and winding Royal Road shirt. That is absolutely,
It's great.
Not controversial whatsoever.
I think maybe we're gonna see an appearance of this shirt on fucking AEW television as well. Yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Well, certain someone got the new shirt too. So
Julia Hart, you sent one to Julia Hart.
Julia Hart. Is it Julia Hart or Julia Hart? Julia Hart. Brett. It's
Julia.
Yeah,
Julia is Brett's
ex-wife. Ex-wife. Yeah. So yeah, Julia Hart.
Send her one too.
Proud and powerful. Big fans.
All right.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Okay, WH Park. I guess I'll see you in about 2 weeks' time, and until next time.
MCU later.